So you mean to tell me I make every decision based off my color? The most racist thing a person could tell me is that I'm supposed to choose something based on my race.
Hollywood loves to sell us glamour and perfection. But what happens when the biggest stars get exposed for shocking racism? From comedians who crossed the line, to rappers who destroyed their own empires, to legends who shocked the world with their words. We're breaking down 13 stars who went from loved to hated overnight. 1. Dave Chappelle.
Have you ever had something happen that was so racist that you didn't even get mad? You were just like, God damn, that was racist.
Dave Chappelle is one of those comedians who has always lived on the edge. He's funny, bold, and not afraid to say things that others wouldn't dare to whisper. That's exactly why he's been praised as a genius, but also why he's been slammed as problematic. In 2019, when his Netflix special Sticks and Stones dropped, the internet exploded. Some people were laughing, but a lot of others were outraged. In the special, Chappelle made jokes about the LGBTQ+ community, especially transgender people, and critics said he wasn't just telling edgy jokes. He was punching down on a group that already faces discrimination every day. For many, comedy should punch up at the powerful, not down at people who are already marginalized. This sparked a huge debate. Was Chappelle just exercising free speech in comedy, or was he spreading harmful ideas disguised as jokes? What made the situation even bigger was that Chappelle didn't back down. While other celebrities might have quickly apologized, he stood firm and defended his jokes. He said comedy is supposed to challenge people, make them uncomfortable, and spark conversation. To him, that was part of the art. But to his critics, this defense only made things worse. They saw it as him refusing to acknowledge the pain his words caused. The reaction was intense. Some people boycotted Netflix, saying they shouldn't give him a platform. LGBTQ+ organizations released statements criticizing both Chappelle and Netflix for allowing what they saw as hate speech to be packaged as humor. At the same time, many fans defended him, claiming cancel culture was going too far. It almost became a cultural war. Freedom of speech versus respect for marginalized groups. What's interesting is that despite the outrage, Chappelle's popularity didn't really take a hit. If anything, the controversy boosted him even more. People who agreed with him felt he was a voice standing against political correctness, while others still watched just to see what the fuss was about. The drama proved one thing. Dave Chappelle isn't just a comedian, he's a cultural flashpoint. He forces society to argue with itself. But here's the big question. Where's the line between comedy and cruelty? Can a joke just be a joke? Or do famous comedians have a responsibility to think about the impact of their words? Chappelle made people laugh, but he also made a lot of people feel attacked. That's the double-edged sword of being fearless on stage. 2. Kanye West.
Come go visit the Holocaust Museum. And my response was, let's visit our Holocaust Museum, Planned Parenthood.
If there's one star who knows how to keep himself in the spotlight, it's Kanye West. From calling himself a genius to interrupting Taylor Swift at the VMAs, Kanye has always been unpredictable. But in recent years, his behavior has gone way beyond being quirky or controversial. His comments about Jewish people shocked the world and made even his biggest fans question him. It all started when Kanye began posting and speaking out with anti-Semitic comments in 2022. He tweeted things like going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people and doubled down in interviews with bizarre and harmful claims. The backlash was immediate. People were horrified, and social media went wild. Brands that had been working with him for years, Adidas, Balenciaga, Vogue, cut ties almost instantly. Adidas alone said they lost hundreds of millions of dollars in unsold Yeezy sneakers after dropping him. The crazy part is that Kanye didn't really apologize. Instead, he kept fueling the fire by repeating his views and even praising Hitler in one interview, which shocked everyone. For years, Kanye had been known as an innovator in music and fashion, but now he was being labeled as a dangerous figure, spreading hate. The reaction wasn't just online drama, it was real-world consequences. He lost billionaire status when Adidas ended its partnership. Longtime friends in the industry distanced themselves from him. Fans were torn apart. Some couldn't believe their idol would go that far, while others defended him by saying he was just misunderstood. But let's be real. His words weren't just misunderstood, they were offensive and deeply harmful. This controversy also reignited the conversation about mental health. Kanye has been open about his struggles with bipolar disorder, and some people argued that his outbursts were symptoms of his illness. Others pushed back, saying mental health doesn't excuse hateful speech. It's a tricky debate because it makes people wonder, when does someone need help and when do they need accountability? At the end of the day, Kanye's legacy is complicated. He's one of the most influential artists of our generation, shaping both music and fashion. But his anti-Semitic comments left a dark stain that can't just be ignored. Even if he releases more music, the world will always remember the damage his words caused. The bigger question here is about fame and power. Does being a creative genius give someone a free pass to say whatever they want, or should there always be limits when their words spread hate? Kanye tested those limits and paid the price. 3. Steve Harvey.
Mike was in a lot of trouble, man, and he had a publicist named Ramon Bain.
Steve Harvey is a name almost everyone knows. From Family Feud to his talk shows, he's been making people laugh for decades. He's known for his big smile, mustache, and over-the-top reactions that became memes all over the internet. But in 2017, Steve Harvey found himself in a controversy that showed how a joke can sometimes cross the line. On his talk show, Harvey made fun of Asian men while pretending to review a self-help book titled How to Date a White Woman. He cracked jokes saying things like, "Nobody's saying, y'all ever seen them Asian dudes with nice bodies?" and kept going with more stereotypes. The audience laughed at first, but when the clip hit the internet, the response wasn't so funny. People were quick to call him out for reinforcing tired stereotypes about Asian men being unattractive or unmanly. For years, Asian men in Western media have been portrayed as the punchline rather than as complex characters. Harvey's comments, even if meant as a joke, added to that problem. It wasn't just about one segment, it touched on bigger issues of representation in Hollywood. The backlash was intense. Social media lit up with people saying Harvey's jokes weren't just harmless fun, but damaging, especially since he had such a huge platform. Advocacy groups and many Asian Americans expressed disappointment, pointing out that stereotypes like these fuel racism and make it harder for Asian men to be seen as equals. To his credit, Harvey did apologize after the criticism. He released a statement saying his joke was meant to be funny, not hurtful, but he understood it offended many people. Still, apologies don't erase the damage. The whole incident reminded everyone that comedy carries responsibility. A punchline can sometimes hurt people more than it entertains. What makes this story even more important is that Harvey himself has talked about facing racism as a black man in America. So people expected him to understand how damaging stereotypes can be. That's why many felt extra let down. It wasn't just any comedian, it was someone who had also lived through discrimination. At the end of the day, Steve Harvey's career survived the controversy. He's still hosting shows, writing books, and making people laugh. But that 2017 incident is a reminder that no matter how big you are, one joke can reveal blind spots. Humor doesn't exist in a vacuum. It can either challenge stereotypes or reinforce them. 4. Azealia Banks.
She said that you make music for gays.
I do.
Azealia Banks is one of those celebrities who seems to be in the spotlight more for her drama than her music. She burst onto the scene with her hit 212, and everyone thought she was going to be the next big thing in hip-hop. But instead of just being known for her talent, she became known for her Twitter rants, wild feuds, and offensive remarks. Over the years, Banks has gone after everyone, from fellow musicians to random fans online. But the biggest problem wasn't just her constant fights, it was the language she used. She's been called out multiple times for racist and homophobic slurs, which made people question whether she was sabotaging her own career. One of the most infamous incidents happened when she attacked former One Direction member Zayn Malik on Twitter. She used racist insults against him, which caused a massive uproar. Twitter eventually suspended her account after that rant. And that wasn't even the only time. Her history is full of offensive posts targeting different communities. It wasn't just racism either. Banks has been slammed for making homophobic comments, which felt especially shocking since a lot of her fan base came from the LGBTQ+ community. Instead of building bridges with the people who supported her, she often pushed them away with her harsh words. What's sad is that Azealia Banks is talented. She has a unique sound, bold fashion sense, and could have built a strong career. But controversy seemed to follow her wherever she went, mostly because of her own actions. Instead of headlines about her music, it was always about her latest fight or offensive outburst. The public reaction has been rough. Many people stopped taking her seriously as an artist, seeing her more as an internet troll than a rapper. Fellow celebrities distanced themselves, and she lost opportunities because brands and event organizers didn't want to deal with her unpredictable behavior. Even her fans, the ones who loved her at the start, got tired of defending her when she kept making the same mistakes. What makes Azealia's story so frustrating is that she often talks about how the music industry treats black women unfairly. She's not wrong about that. Hollywood and the music business do have issues with race and sexism. But instead of channeling that fight into her art or activism, she kept burning bridges with people who might have been her allies. Now, Azealia Banks has this reputation, talented but toxic. People can't separate her music from her controversies because she's made sure the drama always overshadows everything else. It's like she became her own worst enemy. 5. Stacey Dash.
Stacey Dash versus BET, round 3.
If we don't want segregation, then we need to get rid of channels like BET.
Stacey Dash is one of those Hollywood stories that feels like a rise and fall drama. Back in the 90s, she was everywhere. People loved her in the classic teen movie Clueless, and for a while, she was seen as a rising star who could do it all. But instead of being remembered for her acting, Stacey Dash ended up being known more for her political opinions, and not in a good way. What really got her into trouble was when she started speaking out on Fox News as a political commentator. Now, it's not unusual for celebrities to get political, but the things Dash said really upset a lot of people, especially in the black community. One of the biggest controversies was when she criticized Black History Month and BET, Black Entertainment Television. She basically said both were unnecessary, suggesting that black people didn't need separate recognition or spaces in media. That comment did not sit well with many people. Critics accused her of forgetting where she came from and turning her back on her own community. The word sellout started being attached to her name, and some even called her a plantation slave, which is harsh but shows how angry people were. For many, her comments felt like she was siding with those who dismiss racism instead of acknowledging the real struggles black people face. The backlash was intense. Social media dragged her, memes popped up everywhere, and her career in Hollywood basically froze. She went from being a beloved actress to being someone people didn't want to support anymore. Even her family got pulled into the drama. Her cousin, Damon Dash, publicly said he didn't agree with her comments. That only made the situation worse for her reputation. What's interesting is that Stacey Dash later admitted in interviews that she had been struggling personally during those years. In 2021, she said she was dealing with drug addiction and making poor choices. She even apologized for some of her past political statements, saying she was being angry and judgmental. But by then, the damage to her reputation had already been done. Hollywood had moved on, and she became more of a cautionary tale than a star. It's sad, really. Stacey Dash had talent, beauty, and a career that could have gone far, but her words overshadowed all of it. Whether people agree with her political views or not, the way she expressed them made her look disconnected from the struggles of her own community. Instead of using her platform to uplift, she ended up alienating herself from both Hollywood and her fans. 6. Shaquille O'Neal.
How long have you lived in that house?
Since 1996.
Oh, a long time.
Yeah, a long time.
So did you build it?
Shaquille O'Neal, better known as Shaq, is one of the most famous athletes in the world. He's a 4-time NBA champion, a Hall of Famer, and one of the most dominant basketball players to ever step on the court. But Shaq isn't just about basketball. He's a TV personality, a businessman, a DJ, and even dabbles in acting. For the most part, people love him. He's funny, larger than life, and always entertaining. But even Shaq has had his controversial moments, and one in particular still follows him. Back in 2002, during a radio interview, Shaq made comments mocking Chinese basketball player Yao Ming. He imitated speaking Chinese by saying, "Ching chong yang wa a so." At the time, he probably thought it was just a silly joke, but when the clip spread, it caused outrage. Asian Americans and others around the world called him out for being racist and disrespectful. The thing about Shaq's comment is that it hit on a stereotype that Asian people have been dealing with for decades, the ching-chong mockery of their language. To a lot of people, it wasn't just a dumb joke. It was a reminder of the bullying and racism they'd faced growing up. Coming from someone as popular as Shaq, it felt even more disappointing. When the backlash hit, Shaq did apologize. He said he meant no harm and that he respected Yao Ming as a competitor. Yao himself later brushed it off and said he didn't take it personally, but the moment still left a mark. People started questioning why such a beloved figure thought it was okay to make fun of someone's race on air. Years later, the comment resurfaced online and sparked new discussions about racism in sports and media. It showed how something said as a joke can live on and keep hurting people long after the words are spoken. Shaq, who usually comes across as a goofy, lovable giant, was reminded that even he isn't immune to being held accountable for offensive remarks. The controversy didn't end Shaq's career, far from it. He's still on TV, still a brand ambassador, and still one of the most recognizable figures in sports. But it's an example of how humor, when it crosses into stereotypes, can damage reputations and remind people of deeper issues in society. What makes this story even more important is that Shaq himself has spoken about facing racism as a black man. So when he turned around and made a racial joke about another community, it struck a nerve. People expected him to know better. 7. Virgil Abloh.
Brands are starting to have a new type of dialogue with the customer.
Virgil Abloh was one of those names that made waves in both fashion and culture. He wasn't just a designer, he was a visionary. As the first black artistic director at Louis Vuitton's menswear line and the creator of the iconic streetwear brand Off-White, Virgil completely changed how people saw luxury fashion. He blended high-end runway looks with everyday street style, and young people around the world connected with his work. But even someone as respected as Virgil wasn't free from controversy. In 2020, when protests broke out across the U.S. after the killing of George Floyd, the country was going through a moment of deep pain and anger. People were demanding justice and accountability. But alongside the peaceful protests, there were also incidents of looting and property damage, and that's where Virgil got himself into trouble. Virgil made comments that many people took as blaming black people for the violence happening during the protests. He also posted about donating $50 to bail funds for arrested protesters. That number, $50, was seen as embarrassingly small, especially coming from someone as wealthy and successful as him. Social media erupted, calling him out for being out of touch and even performative. Critics said it looked like he was focusing more on the property damage than the bigger issue, racial injustice. The backlash was fast and harsh. People expected Virgil, as a black leader in fashion, to be fully supportive of the movement. Instead, his words made it sound like he was siding with businesses over the community. To many, that felt like a betrayal. Memes spread, fans dragged him online, and the hashtag #VirgilAbloh, $50, went viral. To his credit, Virgil did try to explain himself later. He said his comments were taken out of context and that he had actually donated much more money privately. He also expressed his support for the fight against racial injustice. But by then, the damage was already done. His reputation took a hit, and some people never looked at him the same way again. What makes this moment stand out is how much responsibility comes with influence. Virgil was more than a designer. He was a cultural icon. Young people, especially black creatives, looked up to him as proof that you could break into spaces traditionally dominated by white men. That's why his words carried so much weight. When he seemed to misstep, it hurt. Virgil passed away in 2021 after a private battle with cancer, and his legacy is still celebrated. He opened doors for so many others in fashion and beyond. But the controversy around his 2020 comments shows that even trailblazers can get called out when they appear disconnected from the struggles of their own people. 8. Spike Lee.
Complex subject, because each artist should be allowed to pursue the artistic endeavor.
Spike Lee is a legend in Hollywood. He's not just a filmmaker, he's a storyteller who has spent decades making movies that tackle race, class, and culture head-on. Films like Do the Right Thing, Malcolm X, and BlackaKklansman aren't just entertainment, they're statements. Spike Lee has always been unapologetic about his vision and his voice. But that boldness has also landed him in controversies, including accusations of anti-Semitism. The controversy mainly comes from the way Spike has portrayed Jewish characters in some of his films. For example, in Mo Better Blues, 1990, there are two Jewish club owners who are shown as greedy and exploitative. Critics argued that these characters played into harmful stereotypes about Jewish people controlling money and taking advantage of others. For many, it crossed the line from social commentary into reinforcing anti-Semitic tropes. This wasn't just a small critique, it sparked heated debates. Some argued Spike was simply reflecting real dynamics in certain industries. Others said he went too far and painted Jewish characters in a one-dimensional, negative light. The Anti-Defamation League even publicly criticized his work at the time, saying it spread dangerous stereotypes. Spike, of course, defended himself. He insisted that he wasn't anti-Semitic and that his films were about telling the truth as he saw it. For him, art was supposed to be raw and real, not watered down to make people comfortable. But for many Jewish viewers, it felt personal. When a filmmaker as influential as Spike Lee uses stereotypes, it can reinforce biases that already exist in society. What makes this controversy complicated is that Spike Lee has also made films that call out racism and injustice against black people. He's always been about shining a light on uncomfortable truths. But the accusations of anti-Semitism show how easy it is to cross from challenging stereotypes into repeating them. In trying to tell one truth, you can accidentally hurt another community. Despite the criticism, Spike Lee's career kept thriving. He's won Oscars, directed commercials, and continues to make movies that spark conversation. But the accusations never fully went away. Every time his work touches on Jewish characters or themes, people remember those earlier portrayals and bring them up again. The bigger lesson here is about responsibility in storytelling. Movies are powerful. They shape how people see the world. Spike Lee's work proves that, which is why the criticism hits so hard. If you're using that power, people expect you to handle it carefully. 9. Jeffree Star.
Jeffrey, tell us a little bit about the tour. Has it been awesome so far? A lot of fun?
Yeah, I've never really done like a full-length tour, so I was kind of nervous.
Jeffree Star is one of those names you either love or hate. He's been one of the biggest beauty influencers in the world, building a multi-million-dollar makeup brand, Jeffree Star Cosmetics, and creating a flashy lifestyle that millions of fans followed online. But behind all the luxury cars, drama-filled YouTube videos, and bold looks, Jeffree's past has always haunted him. And it's a past full of racist controversies that he just can't seem to escape. Back in the mid-2000s, when Jeffree was still making music and building an online following on MySpace, old videos and clips started surfacing where he used racial slurs and offensive language toward minorities. He was caught on camera saying the N-word and making derogatory comments toward black women. These weren't just edgy jokes. They were straight-up racist remarks that made people seriously question who he was behind the makeup. As his YouTube career grew in the 2000s, more of these old clips resurfaced. Some showed him fighting with other influencers and using disgusting language, while others showed him casually making racist jokes. Every time one of these resurfaced, the internet exploded. People called for boycotts of his brand, fans unsubscribed, and hashtags about canceling Jeffree would trend. Jeffree did try to apologize, multiple times. He put out videos saying he was young, dumb, and angry back then, and that he had grown as a person. But the thing is, the scandals didn't stop. Even after those apologies, he kept finding himself in more drama. There were accusations of him manipulating other influencers, stirring up feuds, and hiding more racist behavior behind the scenes. To his critics, it felt like he only apologized when it was convenient, not because he had actually changed. The wild part is that Jeffree still managed to stay rich and relevant through it all. His makeup products continued to sell, and his fan base, while smaller than before, stayed loyal. Some people argued that he was just too big to cancel. Others said that his over-the-top personality and blunt honesty actually helped him survive controversies because fans thought he was being real. Still, no matter how much money he makes, Jeffree's reputation will always be tied to his racist past. The internet doesn't forget, and those old videos remain a permanent reminder of what he said. For a beauty mogul who built his empire on being unapologetic, it's ironic that the thing he can never escape is the very words he once refused to apologize for. 10. Lil Wayne.
What do people say?
I'm a gangster, Miss Katie.
Lil Wayne is a rap legend. He's been in the game since he was a teenager, and with hits like Lollipop, A Milli, and 6 Foot 7 Foot, he shaped modern hip-hop. His influence is everywhere. Artists like Drake and Nicki Minaj started under his wing. But even with all that success, Lil Wayne found himself in hot water in 2020 for comments that many people felt were dismissive and even harmful. It happened during an Instagram Live when protests against police brutality were at their peak. While a lot of artists were speaking out about systemic racism and supporting movements like Black Lives Matter, Lil Wayne had a very different take. He suggested that instead of blaming the police or the system, people should blame themselves for the injustices they faced. That comment hit hard and not in a good way. For many fans, it felt like Wayne was ignoring the real struggles of Black Americans who have faced discrimination, profiling, and violence from police for decades. People expected him, as someone who came from the streets of New Orleans and had dealt with racism himself, to understand and show support. Instead, it seemed like he was pointing fingers at the very people who were suffering. The backlash was immediate. Social media lit up with criticism, calling him out for being out of touch and disconnected from reality. Some fans said they couldn't support him anymore. Activists and fellow celebrities also weighed in, saying his comments undermined the entire fight for justice. For someone who was seen as a voice of the streets, it felt like a betrayal. This wasn't the first time Wayne made controversial comments about race. In earlier interviews, he had said things like, "I don't see racism," after having white fans at his concerts, which many people thought was naive. Instead of acknowledging systemic problems, He often pushed the idea that success could erase racism. Critics said this showed a lack of awareness, especially coming from someone with so much influence. What's interesting, though, is that Lil Wayne has had personal experiences with police too. Some good, some bad. He shared stories about cops saving his life as a kid, which may explain why he doesn't view the system the same way others do. But that personal experience doesn't erase the fact that millions of people face racism daily, and his words minimized their struggles. 11. Nick Cannon.
I have not done a ting with Amber Rose.
Well, you're on the lie to take the test.
It's the truth.
Tell me the truth.
It's the truth.
Nick Cannon has been in the spotlight since he was a teenager. From Drumline to America's Got Talent to his hit comedy show Wild 'N Out, he built a career as one of the most versatile entertainers in Hollywood. For years, he was known as the funny, family-friendly guy who could host anything and make it entertaining. But in 2020, Nick Cannon faced one of the biggest scandals of his career, one that nearly destroyed everything he had built. It all started on his podcast, Cannon's Class. During a conversation, Nick made comments that many people immediately recognized as anti-Semitic. He brought up conspiracy theories about Jewish people controlling power and finances, ideas that have been used for centuries to spread hate. He also said things that were seen as promoting racist ideologies. The reaction was explosive. Viacom CBS, the company behind Wild 'N Out, wasted no time. They cut ties with him almost instantly, ending a partnership that had lasted for more than a decade. Fans couldn't believe it. Nick Cannon, the guy who always seemed untouchable, was suddenly canceled. It wasn't just about losing a job. It was about his entire image being flipped upside down. The backlash online was brutal. Social media dragged him, and Jewish organizations called out his comments as dangerous and harmful. What made things worse was how many people had looked up to Nick as a role model. Now, instead of being the fun-loving host, he was being labeled as anti-Semitic. But here's where things got complicated. Nick didn't just disappear. He quickly apologized and admitted he had been wrong. He took meetings with Jewish leaders, listened to their perspectives, and publicly said he wanted to learn from his mistakes. Some people appreciated his effort to grow and educate himself, but others felt the damage was already done. 12. Whoopi Goldberg.
My grandkids, they always wanted me to be in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and now they're old. So now I have a great-granddaughter.
Which, by the way, Whoopi Goldberg is one of the most respected names in Hollywood. She's part of the rare group of stars who have won an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony, the full EGOT. Beyond acting, she's also known as one of the main hosts on The View, where she's built a reputation for being bold, outspoken, and never afraid to share her opinion. But in 2022, that boldness landed her in a controversy that shocked even her biggest fans. On an episode of The View, the panel was discussing the Holocaust. That's when Whoopi said something that instantly went viral. She claimed the Holocaust was not about race, but about man's inhumanity to man. She explained that because the Nazis and Jews were both white, she didn't see it as a racial issue. The reaction was immediate and fierce. Critics, especially from Jewish organizations, pointed out that the Holocaust was absolutely about race. Nazi ideology was rooted in the belief that Jews were a separate, inferior race that needed to be eliminated. By saying it wasn't about race, Whoopi was seen as downplaying the central reason behind one of the worst atrocities in history. Social media blew up, and news outlets picked up the story everywhere. Whoopi quickly apologized, saying she misspoke and never intended to minimize the Holocaust. But the damage had been done, and ABC suspended her from The View for 2 weeks. For someone who had been in the industry for decades and had spoken out against injustice many times, this controversy came as a shock. 13. Chris Rock.
That's right. That's right. They got the housewives of Atlanta. They don't got the working bitches of Atlanta.
Chris Rock is one of the funniest comedians alive. He's hosted the Oscars, starred in movies, and built a career out of sharp, fearless comedy that tackles race and society. But even someone as talented as Chris has faced criticism for crossing the line, and one of his biggest controversies came during the 2016 Academy Awards. That year, the Oscars were under fire for a lack of diversity, with the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite trending everywhere. Chris Rock was chosen to host, and many thought he would be the perfect person to call out Hollywood's diversity problem with humor. And while he did deliver jokes about race, one skit in particular went very wrong. During the show, Chris brought 3 young Asian children on stage as accountants for a gag about stereotypes. The joke played into old cliches about Asians being good at math and working behind the scenes. On the surface, it may have seemed like harmless comedy, but to many viewers, it reinforced a stereotype that has been used to box Asians into narrow roles for decades. The backlash was swift. Advocacy groups, celebrities, and fans called him out for being racially insensitive, especially since the show was supposed to highlight diversity issues. Instead of breaking stereotypes, the skit seemed to repeat them. It was even more disappointing because people expected Chris Rock, who often talks about racism against black people, to understand how damaging stereotypes can be to other minority groups. Chris later brushed off some of the criticism, but the incident stuck. It became a reminder that even comedians who use humor to challenge society can sometimes fall into the same traps they're trying to criticize. This wasn't the only time Chris Rock's comedy has sparked debates. Throughout his career, some of his jokes about women, relationships, and race have been called out as offensive or outdated. While many defend him by saying comedy is supposed to push boundaries, others argue that comedians should still be careful not to reinforce harmful ideas. Despite the criticism, Chris Rock's career hasn't slowed down. He continues to perform stand-up, act in films, and stay relevant in pop culture. But the Oscars skit shows how tricky comedy can be. What makes some people laugh can make others feel excluded or insulted, and when you're on one of the biggest stages in the world, every joke is under a microscope. So, which of these shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like button, and of course, subscribe for more deep dives into the messy side of Hollywood.